This is Marquivas Furious Nias, and you're listening to Deeper Than Music Radio.
The core of you, the fans, the truth is deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the new is deeper than music, deeper than music. The core of you, the fans, the truth is deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the new is deeper than music, deeper than music.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Deeper Than Music Radio. Behind every great song, there's an even greater story. I'd like to say what's up to everybody listening to us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all the other podcasting platforms that showcase this podcast. Not only do we interview musicians, we also interview entertainers, actors, directors, and today we have a very special treat. We have a guy that speaks to a lot of things that I talk to a lot of people about, not just, using all your God-given talents to your advantage to create and to innovate. This guy has created a web series that's actually on Amazon and various other streaming platforms about the real Roaring 20s called Half Past Jump. But not only has he done this, he's graduated from I can't even pronounce it. It's University in Atlanta with a BA in economics. He was later an actor, and he did Broadway plays. And from that, he actually started his own independent production company, Paragon Multimedia, and a way to create his streaming content that is out now and also for theatrical releases. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Terrence Patterson here on Deeper Than Music Radio. Terrence, how you
doing? Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
And my first question is, how do you pronounce is it Allah? I can't even pronounce it.
At the university, Oglethorpe University. It's in Atlanta.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, small college just north of Lenox Square in Atlanta off of Peachtree Road.
Yeah, so, you've done a lot. And the one thing that I admire about it is you have a foundation. A lot of people, I guess, with today's society with technology, I tell a lot of younger kids, it's like there's no way that you should just be one way or one side about things. With so much technology and so much things in your hands, like
right.
You got to be multifaceted and cross-functional, and you speak to that. So with all that, you have your own series called Half Past Jump Time, and what's special about this is you got this information from your grandparents, just what they talked about, and they lived during the Harlem Renaissance?
Correct. Yeah, they lived in New York for just a little bit. My grandmother met my grandfather here. She actually was from the Midwest, and he was from Florida. And they just happened to cross paths here. Just very, they got married and moved down south. But yeah, they lived here. And she used to just tell me some stories when I would visit her. She lived in Jacksonville, and I lived in Daytona growing up. And I would just, bend the ear, ask a ton of questions whenever, because she lives, a little far away. So whenever I would see her, I would just have all these questions about it. So, most times I would just ask her about her, her youth, because, with your grandparents, you just don't really think about, hey, they used to be young at some point. They had a life before you came along. So she would just tell me some stories. And from that was the jumping off point for Half Past Jump Time.
Wow. So initially, I just want to walk through your journey because it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. So initially, my first question is, because I see you got a BA in economics.
Yeah.
Was that your pathway, or did you always have a passion to want to act and be in film?
I know why you asked that. You see economics, you think, okay, they're either going to go to law school or go into investment banking or something like that. The path really for me was I was going to move. I moved to New York, and I was going to give myself a year and a half. Either I was going to make it as far as entertainment and getting involved in it, or I was going to go to law school. I was going to take the LSAT once more because the score I got the first time I didn't really like. So I was going to take the LSAT and prepare to go to law school. But I actually started to take some acting classes at HB Studios in Chelsea. Then I had a private coach for a minute. And then I just realized after auditions and, there wasn't a whole lot of parts, for black men back, at that time. So I just kind of was more of a producer. I thought that would be where my strengths would lie. Doing things in the background, making sure things are done, because that's kind of how I kind of have a project kind of set in mind. So whenever I attack something, I kind of attack the goal and just try to figure out how we're going to reach that goal. So instead of being an actor, I transitioned to producer, started producing off-Broadway plays, auditioning for some myself, not getting the parts. I just wasn't a good actor. But I was a better producer. And then now I'm writing this show. So now I'm a writer, producer, and now a creator.
Okay. And then, so Half Past Jump Time. Can you give us the rundown or synopsis of the show and what it's about?
Sure. It's Half Past Jump Time. The name came. As I was developing the show, I had a hard time coming up with the name for the show because it deals with so many different elements. Harlem Renaissance, science fiction, contemporary hip hop dances. So I was actually looking through YouTube, came across a video by a singer in the, I believe, 1940s, 50s named Mabel Lee. She has a song called Half Past Jump Time. And I don't know, it just kind of like spoke to me as far as what the show was about. It kind of had that new, the jump time part of it kind of gave me something contemporary, and then the half past kind of gave me something nostalgic, like the 1920s Harlem Renaissance. So that name just kind of stuck with me. The show itself is about a Harlem Renaissance time traveler who visits New York in contemporary New York in 2020, and she visits her niece who thought she had passed away hundreds of years ago, but she's come back to New York to approach her niece, knowing also that maybe doing that would mess up her timeline because with sci-fi you got to be careful with that. But yeah, she wanted to take her back to her Cotton Club type establishment in Harlem Renaissance to help save it from being taken away from her by a group of bad people. And the reason she does that is because she's seen her dance. She's come to visit her, in contemporary time, but she doesn't let her know that. And she has seen her. She's a choreographer, dancer. Went on a couple of tours with some R&B, maybe hip hop acts, and she just hasn't made it yet. So she's seen her dance. She's seen how hip hop is so immersed in contemporary society, contemporary culture, especially from an entertainment standpoint. And she just makes a decision. Let's bring some of that back to the 1920s. And that's how the story starts. And then from there, we get to learn. For me, I'm approaching it from a anthropology standpoint, where we're studying the 1920s and juxtaposing that against contemporary society, and just kind of seeing if things have changed from an African-American perspective. It'll be a multicultural show, but the main cast will be African-American. Just stemming again from my grandmother and talking about one of her one thing she liked to say was, learning from our past. And, I'm just, for me, from anthropological and historical standpoint, I'm like, have we really learned from our past, from the things that have happened to people, especially in the 1920s in Harlem, when the Great Depression came, it kind of stopped everybody, but particularly for creative, African Americans during the Harlem Renaissance here and in Paris and, in the Caribbean and, in other places. So I kind of want to touch on that because, everyone loves the 1920s. There's nothing you can't really not like about it. It seems like it's been glamorized a lot by Hollywood. And I just kind of wanted to take a more personal look at it from people who lived in the Harlem Renaissance and kind of get a granular picture of what they were going through in their daily lives, because it couldn't have been easy, of course, just from maybe a racial standpoint, economic standpoint, even from my main character wanted to open a business. I mean, it could have been pretty hard for a black woman to go and try to get a bank loan or get anyone to give her money to help her business. I mean, it happens now. I couldn't imagine in the 1920s what it was like.
And you know what? You speak on something that's man, I was thinking about this not too long ago. I was thinking about, because another beautiful thing about technology, especially with minorities, there's a lot of stuff that we weren't taught in school. There was a lot of stuff that we didn't know about. Like, the big thing is about Black Wall Street. About Hidden Figures, also about a lot of contributions that Africans American made during that time frame. And one thing that I was very surprised about, when I watched the Quincy Jones documentary on him, and how he spoke of, like, traveling to the South, or, being a black man during the Depression, or just the racial inequalities and the terrorism that we had to experience. And like you say, like you watched The Great Gatsby, that was a good timepiece for certain people, but definitely not for African Americans when we didn't have civil rights. So I'm glad that you speak on that, because it's something, the reality. It's like if you don't know your past, you don't know your future, and then how can you learn from history if you don't know, what was actually going on? I also wanted to ask, did you hear about what Joaquin Phoenix said about BAFTA? The racial inequalities today in the filmmaking industry.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw it. I read an article online about it. Yeah, that was surprising that he said something. That he said it so like, okay, you need to wake up, kind of thing. And I was like, I mean, I know they probably have heard that before, but I guess coming from him, I guess it had some gravitas to it. But as far as that whole, nobody African Americans being nominated. That's a tricky thing with awards. It's because, you're making art, but you do want to be recognized. I don't know why a lot of, I've heard, some famous people say that, like, I'm making it in this art, and I get it, but I don't think there's any artist in the world or planet who doesn't want to be recognized for their work. It doesn't have to be monetary, but they want to make sure that what they've created has been appreciated.
Yeah.
So having said that, I'm sure that there were some films that and roles that were occupied by African American men and women, even that British African Americans or African people would necessitate that maybe someone should have been nominated. I don't know. That's a trick. Like I said, it's a tricky thing, but it does kind of, you look at it through a lens of, okay, a lot of people made some sacrifices for a lot of the project, be it Harriet or any other movies that were deserving of it. Even Jordan Peele's movie, I think it should have been nominated. I thought it was groundbreaking and popular and all that stuff that they want films to be. But yeah, it can be disappointing when you see that list and you don't see anybody that kind of looks like you and moves through the world like you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it is. It kind of like, you're like, okay, so what can we do to get this recognition? I mean, we do get recognition. A couple of years, we get a couple of awards, and then nothing. Like this is happening. Yeah, happening quite often. And I don't know what we could do about it. I'm taking some kind of control of myself and making my own content. But then again, if I got to a point where it was on, my show was on Netflix or Disney Plus or BET Plus, and I would want it, if I think it's really, really good, I would love for it to be recognized. That could be an award, or that could be more press about the show or more critical acclaim. That's another thing. Critical acclaim, I think sometimes when critics look at our shows, sometimes I don't know if, people from certain demographics get what African American artists or Latino artists or Asian artists are trying to say.
Yeah.
And if they don't understand that, then sometimes I don't think they can see the artistic expression that has been done. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, because I know also.
Do I think things are getting better? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, like, there's a lot of shows that I didn't know that were that had an African American or minority cast, but necessarily didn't have people from the culture writing about the experience, right?
Yeah.
I always found that to be fascinating as well, because
I'm gonna talk about that a little bit too. I'm kind of glad you brought that up. Because with our show, because I'm not doing it by myself, I'm actually the sole writer right now. I've been just searching. Because it's a female-led show, I'm looking for, some African American writers, female writers, to help me with the show. Not saying that I couldn't do the job, but I think that if it's an African American, led show with two, females leading the show, and the whole crux of the show is on their back, I think I definitely need. I'm doing it before, in front of the camera and behind the camera, make it as diverse as possible. But I definitely, with the writing, like, I can write definitely for different genders, but I just think there's a nuance that a female writer is definitely going to bring to the show that I wouldn't, as far as writing it. I know I'm pretty good. I believe in my writing talent, but I know that since there's probably 5 to 6 main characters, and a good portion of them are female, I'm definitely going to bring on some more female writers to kind of help me bring out the nuances of those characters or make them seem more real. So,
yeah. And another thing is, like, at what point did you decide to say that, you know what, I'm gonna create my own. I'm gonna create this company to curate and bring out my own content? What led to the genesis of that?
Oh, 10 years of having a day job and getting, starting in film first. Like, this is back before there was even this platform. Well, not even a platform, but just it could be real for me to create something on YouTube and have people watch it. So this was kind of before that time. YouTube was out, but it just wasn't what it was now. So we were doing film, and we were just trying to get people in Hollywood, because my producing partner at the time, Beverly Roscoe Simmons, who's an inspiration for me even getting into this creative field also, she she worked she went to NYU for filmmaking, so she had a lot of contacts from internships. So we were just trying to hustle and try to get we were writing films and trying to get NBA agents to talk to their players to give us money, and getting very close to it. And it was like then something would happen, like either the money wouldn't come through or we wouldn't hear from the person. This is all the horror stories you hear from other people. Like it's a lot making a movie. So after years and years of doing that, we started doing the play. We converted some of the movies into plays and started doing that and getting some recognition. But a lot of it still for me to do the company was, sometimes I just wasn't seeing some of the things I wanted to see on television. That's not to say that I'm better than any of those people, but I like, for me, with this story, like, some African-American female-led sci-fi show. Like, there aren't a lot, but I know that there's a huge audience for it, because I kind of did my own informal poll between my mom and, other, women in my life and people on Facebook, whatever, just saying, hey, would you guys be interested in seeing a female-led sci-fi series, Harlem Renaissance? And that was it. And I got a ton of responses. And I said, okay, these people haven't even seen one episode yet, so there is a market for this. So I created my company, Paragon Multimedia, specifically to put out content that I wanted to see, to serve an audience that I don't think has been underserved, and also to be of service to other people in the entertainment industry, like actors and writers who don't get an opportunity to do some of the projects that they really want to work on. So I'm hoping that a lot of the projects that I have, hopefully in development in this project, will draw those people to want to work with me. So those are the reasons why I created Paragon Multimedia.
Okay, and another question I have, do you remember Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle movie?
Yes.
So in that movie, it spoke to, like, especially particularly with African-American actors, how there were a small number of roles and they were like stereotypical roles.
Yeah.
Do you feel, so that came out in the 80s, do you feel that much has changed, or is that still the case?
I think change has been incremental. Like, we can go on now and see Regina King and The Watchmen. Hopefully it comes back for season 2. We got a bunch of things on Netflix that we could see. Some things on Hulu. There's been some progress, but I think the decision-making process of the people who are making decision-making, because if the people who are gatekeepers to it are not, I think they're more interested now in stories that are from, different cultures that kind of bend genres, like my show and the other shows that are out there. But I don't think the change is happening quick enough. I think that those people who are the decision and gatekeepers still probably are a little bit reluctant, especially from an international standpoint. Everybody wants international. Everything has to be, if it's done well domestically, it used to be, that's great if you did it domestic. Now it's about, is it going to travel far? And then this whole thing about, black movies and African-American television shows not traveling has been rebutted and not, proven not true. And it's still, I think, because I see sometimes on YouTube, I'll see people, if I'm looking at, sometimes there's shows and there's bloggers and they're talking about shows, and I'll see somebody from like the UK or something. They'll say, hey, I love your show. I can only catch it on YouTube because we don't see it in the UK. And I'm like, but that's a popular show in the US, my African Americans, whatever. I can't think of a good example, but it's like, it still hasn't made it that even in the, great continent of Africa, that they shows that premiere here should be premiering there as well, and vice versa. Like, we should be seeing some Nigerian shows. We should be seeing some great South African. That should be happening. But
what's funny is, like, the whole thing was like, oh well, when Black Panther, before it came out, they were, a show about a black superhero won't do well internationally, and it broke records. And then look at Bad Boys 2, Bad Boys for Life right now is breaking records. And I like, one thing that I love about Netflix is now I see like African shows that I would never see. Like there's one show about a detective in Africa, or like when I found out about Luther, shout out to Idris, and it's like, man, we're just more than what American media portrays us. And I tell one of my friends, I grew up in the 80s, and I mean, say what you want to say about Bill Cosby, but because of him, the Huxtables, it made America, it made us look normal on TV. It had something that I could relate to, and also made me think about college, a different world. Right. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm of the mindset that now that because of streaming platforms and now because of technology, it gives you a chance to bring out your content. However, there's still the gatekeepers, right? There's still the resources.
But you can still break through. There's still that, because I think a lot of it is the lack of opportunity. So now you got to make your own opportunity. And like you said, technology can help you do that. Like 15 years ago, I don't think I would have been able to write this show, do this show, have it edited and everything, and be able to put it up and get immediate response. Like, I may have been able to, but I don't think technology hadn't caught up with imagination yet. But now it's surpassed it. So I think, like you said, if you have it in your mind, you can actually kind of do it. You may have to pare it down a little bit because my show, like, I want to do a whole bunch of things. I'm like, but that's not the budget. And so you got to kind of pare it down and make it work. But I think there's hardly any limitations now. If you want to tell a story, you have a platform to do it. So now I guess it's up to you to execute.
Yeah, and curate. And so far, what has been the biggest challenge of starting your own company and then getting your content out there?
Funding. like most people. Yeah, especially with this part. With entertainment, it's different if you go into a venture capitalist and you have an app that you develop with a bunch of people. It's something tangible that they can hold on to. But when you're trying to get people to give you money, crowdfunding is good, which I'm probably going to actually do also, especially for the special effects part of my show. Can you repeat your question? I totally missed.
I was just saying what has been the challenge, and you said it's funding.
Funding, just getting money. Sometimes it's scheduling, especially at an independent level like I'm doing it. Like a lot of my dancers, they're professional dancers, so they tour. So I have to kind of schedule things in between their tour dates, which is a good thing. I'm glad they're making a sacrifice and they're well trained and they're going to help my show. But sometimes it's those kind of logistics when you're doing it on an independent level. You have to kind of work with other people and their schedules and make sure when they're free and they have downtime that you can rehearse. Because my show, the dancers are also acting, so they have to have two rehearsals. The choreography with Michael Bishop, who is my choreographer, and also with the director too. They got to do the dialogue. So it's a challenging show for at this level, but they're up to it and they've been doing a really good job. We have episodes 8 through 6 already written. We're in pre-production. We're going to start doing those in April. And like I said, we're probably going to have a crowdfunding to help us with that. But that's one of the main things is the funding and sometimes, scheduling and working at an independent level. Sometimes you got to have backups, not so much for the actors, but sometimes people have other gigs. And sometimes, if they want to work on something that's on Netflix, as opposed to working on my team. I don't get mad at them for wanting to do it because it's more money. Come on, it's hard to live in New York and be creative and not,
the price of living in New York.
Yeah, but anywhere these days, Atlanta's expensive now. It used to be affordable to me, but now it's really expensive.
Oh yeah, and this may take you a minute to think about or to answer.
Okay. All right.
Since your grandparents in their stories of the Harlem Renaissance, and I mean that was, I'm not gonna lie, man. When I was in high school and I learned about the Harlem Renaissance, I lit up. Like I love Langston Hughes. One of my favorite spots to go to is Busboys and Poets in DC.
Mm-hmm.
But my question: what is the biggest takeaway that you've gotten from the stories from your grandparents?
And so from research or whatever the case would be about Harlem Renaissance?
Yes.
Okay. All right, give me a second. Because I'm doing a lot of research now at Schomburg Center, so I'm learning a lot of things. But I think one of the main things that I learned, or that what really stuck to me about that whole period and from my grandparents was just to me the similarities between people then and people now. You think that back then that people had different wants and needs and desires, but people still had dreams. And it's funny when I'm reading, biographies of people and historical literature about people in the 1920s, especially Harlem Renaissance, just the mere fact that even having a dream back then, I think sometimes you had to feel like you had to limit yourself, because just how far could you go if you didn't have money to be able to do the things that you wanted to do? Again, like I allude to my main character being able to go to a bank and just get money. Like I think my grandmother, she's telling me one story. This is one that I do remember about this lady that she knew that for the couple of months that she lived here in New York, that the lady had actually come into a lot of money from her grandparents, and she went to the bank with some cash. I guess they had found once one of her grandparents had died, and tried to deposit the money, and they didn't believe it was hers.
Wow.
This lady is grieving now. I'm reading this now. This lady is grieving. I'm reading the story. I'm like, "What? You just lost a parent, and now you have to live with the fact that this person in this bank, I'm assuming they probably were African American, are saying that this money is not real. It's not. I mean, it's real, but where did you get it from?" And kind of giving this lady the third degree, and she had to have one of her, I guess, somebody she worked for. I want to say she worked for some lady on Park Avenue. She was a maid, and she actually had her or her sister or somebody had to deposit the money for her.
Wow.
I thought that was weird. I was like, just those kind of things, like you just couldn't live a normal life. That's what really kind of stuck out to me. It's like the things that we take for granted, being able to go and dream as much as we want to. We can go into different places that we couldn't go in then. And I'm just thinking then just how limited that could have been. To just say I wanted to be a Hollywood star and just know that they really didn't have a vehicle. We had we had to, make our own stuff. But then again, how was it going to be seen and be distributed if we didn't have if banks were giving us money to open up, theater places to show the movies. And then it was expensive to even make movies. So it was a lot. That's kind of what I took from it. And from my grandmother is that African Americans having dreams, and sometimes in periods in African and American history, we weren't able to live our biggest dream. That was what
we weren't. And then come to find out sometimes when we thrived, or if something happened, it could all be taken away, right?
Like Tulsa. Yeah, with the Watchmen. Like when that scene really stuck to me. Was that whole scene with the Tulsa massacre? It's like I've read about it before, and we can touch on that too, about the lack of some things that we have in African American history. But we actually have to go out and find history about ourselves.
Oh yeah,
a lot of. I'm sure with you, I found out a lot of things about us that I teach this in school. This is crazy. But going back to that scene, the Tulsa massacre, like you said, they were thriving, had their own economy, self-sufficient, had having been coming from former slaves, and some of them may have actually had been slaves if they had lived, if they were old at that time, and just to have it taken away like that's a lot. That's even mentally to think about that. What was the after effect of that? What was the mentality of the people at that time in that area? Like we can't even have something nice at this table. We weren't bothering anybody. Like I don't understand why would they do that to us, and that's something to really think about. I mean, I don't want to get morose about it, but it's just that's powerful if you think about it.
Oh yeah,
Being successful and having it all taken away for no reason, only because of the color of your skin, and certain people didn't want to see you succeed, which kind of goes against that, American freedoms and how the country was founded. You're supposed to be able to live your dream and do whatever you want to do, but not for certain people.
And to get deep on you, man, D.L. Hughley said on one of his shows, he was like, the problem with America is the ideals of what America's supposed to be is in conflict of what America actually is, right?
Yeah. And what they say is not what the reality is.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I know we make incremental strides, like I said before. I'm saying, from the 1920s, I don't know if I could go back there and live in that time. I mean, impossible for me to do it, but just if I could, it's just that would be a lot to deal with. So that's what I want to take my characters, the contemporary kids that are like in their early 20s, mid 20s, they just finished college. They go back, and then we got to get a microscope of how they live in modern day New York and have those freedoms and the limitations that they have, back then.
And I think with that too, it'll help people understand and appreciate, where a group of people come from and where they've been and where they're going now. And then also it helps talk about, and this is just from having a 13-year-old daughter, is something that you can relate to and something that you can appreciate, because the Harlem Renaissance is such a beautiful period in time. Yeah, right. We hear about it maybe in literature class, but not in depth. Like, you're actually putting your audience in that time period.
Yeah, and that's like you said, everybody's attracted to that time period because, again, from an African-American standpoint, the invention of jazz. And that's why I juxtapose that with the invention of, I'm bringing hip-hop there, another African-American musical invention. So I kind of wanted to juxtapose that as well.
Yeah.
Those different things.
It's definitely, man, like I said, I saw that and I was like, I told my daughter, like, look, we got to check this out. And it also reminded me of a Netflix show. And I was like, man, I wish this would have came out when I was a kid. Have you heard of Raising Dion? Yeah.
No, that's one of my favorite sci-fi shows. That's Netflix did a good job with that, right? That's Netflix, right? Yeah, did a good job with that. It was very character-driven, which I like. Sometimes sci-fi shows is all about the spectacle, but you really got to know him. And I like to see a young brother carrying a movie and his acting was really good. He's going to get a lot of work. He was really good. He carried that movie.
Yeah. And what has been with all this that you've done in your career, what has been your most rewarding moment so far?
I guess, you know what? I can say that happened multiple times and most rewarding. Just getting something done. Like, people don't understand just the mere fact that I got 2 episodes done. They think it's easy because they're only like 10, 20 minutes. And I'm like, you guys have done the logistics of having to get that all done. Like, when we wrap on the last day, that's the best feeling for me in the world. Like, when we wrap and I've gotten everything that I needed, if I don't have to do any reshoots, and everything worked out perfectly, and everybody in the set is happy, then I feel like I've done something. So that's the most rewarding thing to me. And then seeing my words come to life, or seeing something that came out of my mind come to life, and it means something to somebody else other than me.
Oh man, that's great, because I know it takes a lot to do film. I know it takes a lot to create, edit, a whole bunch of, like, one of my friends, he does independent movies, and the part that I think is the most in my mind, like I haven't actually seen it done or done it myself, is the voiceovers, man. To me, that looks crazy. Like, getting that done is like, wow. You mean to tell me that you got to do your voice over what you already said? So I can imagine that. Yeah, you got to match it. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. Post-production is always kind of tricky because you just kind of never know what you're going to find once you get there. Everything shot, it gets it, and you're like, wow, we didn't get that shot, or we didn't get that, or the mic, it doesn't sound good, the sound was bad, or a train went by, or a car went by on an important word. Yeah, so it's all those kind of things. But yeah, it takes a lot to do even a web series. Like, when I see somebody do a television show or a movie, I take my hat off to them, because it takes a lot just to get something done, just to make all of that work, the money, the people, the time, getting locations, costumes, wardrobe, makeup. It's a lot. Yeah.
But it's rewarding. But it's really rewarding once you get it done.
Hey, so Terrence, man, I want to say, man, thank you, and thank you for what you're doing, man. And I want to shout out Jimmy Starr. When he brought you my way, I was just like, wow, I think this is a great opportunity. You're on to something, and I just see nothing but doors opening. And I like, one thing that I love about like platforms like Amazon, platforms like Netflix, is their door openers. But also, I see more and more, like when I look at my Netflix, I see more and more of different cultures and different countries, and just new movies coming in, new content. And for me, that gives me hope. Like, okay, wow, soon we should see more and more. And I want to put this in the universe, man. I expect to see your stuff there. You know what I mean? Like, you're already on Amazon Prime, right?
Yeah, but that's a dream, man. That is. I'm Amazon Prime, Netflix. They pick it up and help me to, get it to the place where it needs to be. So, man, yeah, please put that out there in the universe because I put it out mentally myself. So, yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's a good enough story, rich enough story, an interesting enough story that, hopefully it will get the attention. Well, I won't say hopefully, it will get the attention, whatever that may be. It'll get the attention that it needs.
And then a sidebar question. You got your bachelor's in economics. Did that help with you budgeting? Like whenever you were in a crunch and like, all right, I gotta make this work or get that in a budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Having the software that I use to help do that. Yeah, I just make sure. Having done this for a little while, I kind of have it down a little bit as far as what I need to spend and what kind of contingency. I always have a contingency. I have a budget, and then I have a contingency because you just never know what's going to happen. You never know if you got to switch locations, and you may have to pay a little bit more money, or a costume is ruined and you got to hurry up and go buy something. Whatever the case may be. So yeah, my economics degree definitely with the finance and the economics has definitely helped me, and project management really helped me become a better producer.
Wow. So now the last question, or actually it's not even like I put it out on my Facebook page and on social media that, look, this is the overview of your show. And a lot of my friends were like, man, it's going to be a good series. They checked it out and loved it. Where else, like this is shameless promotion time, where else can people hear about you, your production company, social medias, what you got, and what do we have to look forward to in the future?
Okay. Great. So you can check us out on our website at halfpastjumptime.com. On Facebook at halfpastjumptime, that's all one word. YouTube, it's under our company, Paragon Multimedia TV. Twitter at halfweb, WEB. Instagram, HPJT_ the web series with an S at the end. And you can check us out from video standpoint. We have a Facebook page, which I said at half past jump time. We're on Vimeo, Amazon Prime, and on our website. I'm thinking about in the future possibly getting having an app that's developed so that I could put it out that way so people can just download an app, because I have a couple of different shows I want to kind of get out there as well. So I may do that. But for now, Facebook, Vimeo, and Amazon Prime.
Wow. And ladies and gentlemen, there you have Terrence Patterson, Paragon Multimedia, Half Past Jump Time here on Deeper Than Music Radio to share the motivation behind what he does and just his background and more about the show. And definitely check this out. And I look forward to you expanding that and then the other shows that you have in the pipeline as well. And thank you for all that you do. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Nias, Deeper Than Music Radio, with our special guest here, Terrence Patterson, signing off on Deeper Than Music.
All right. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
The core of you, the fans, the truth is deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the new is deeper than music, deeper than music. The core of you, the fans, the truth is deeper than music, deeper than music. Simply the truth is the latest, the new is deeper than music, deeper than music.